Mr. President, across this country, Americans are facing aggressive attacks on their reproductive freedom. An extremist Supreme Court and radical right-wing politicians have made clear they see women as second-class citizens and that government, not the person who is pregnant, but government should be making decisions about whether or not to carry a pregnancy to term. In this extraordinary moment, we must do everything we can to ensure that patients get the health care and reproductive services that they need. And that includes protecting patients from the deceptive practices of some so-called crisis pregnancy centers, or CPCs. Nationwide, there are over 2,500 known CPCs, although some claim that the number is closer to about 4,000. Now, before Roe was overturned, over 16 million women of reproductive age lived closer to a crisis pregnancy center than to an abortion clinic. Now, some estimate as many as 34 million women do. And today, in Massachusetts, CPCs outnumber true abortion clinics by about 3 to 1. CPCs often lure women seeking legitimate reproductive care, including abortions, into their facilities by advertising themselves as comprehensive reproductive health care providers. But this is flatly untrue. Many of these CPCs are not health care providers, and they often operate specifically to deceive pregnant women with the goal of preventing them from having abortions. CPC websites often feature images of people in white lab coats and promises of services like ultrasounds or STD tests. Yet, CPCs rarely employ licensed physicians or offer a full range of reproductive health services. According to one study, 84% of CPCs had no physician, and 75% had no registered nurse even affiliated with the staff. In fact, of the staff that did have some medical training, most work part-time or as volunteers. As for the services they provide, the same study found that only 1 out of 607 crisis pregnancy centers provided contraceptive care, and 95% of CPCs offered no prenatal care, none, zero. Most have no doctors, no nurses, and offer no medical care, but they sure have a lot of medical opinions. Nearly 2/3 promoted medically unsound claims, such as offering information about unproven and unscientific abortion pill reversal treatments. Deception is at the heart of the operation for many CPCs. The director of a crisis pregnancy center in Texas explained to the Washington Post how she revamped operations so her center could pull in more people who were seeking an abortion. The director paid thousands of dollars to ensure that searches for phrases like "need an abortion" would lead people to her center, and she filled the website with phrases like "I want an abortion" and promised confidential abortion consultation, no cost to you. The website is so deceptive that the director said she even receives angry calls from anti-abortion advocates who want to know why her center even talks about abortion, to which she replies, "How else do you get an abortion-minded girl to know that you're there?" Deception is wrong. No one should be deceived, directly or indirectly, about the services they can access or the risks of receiving care. That is particularly true for someone under great stress and time constraints who is coping with an unplanned pregnancy. And that is why I am glad to introduce the Stop Anti-Abortion Disinformation Act with Senator Menendez, and why I am joining him today in calling up this legislation for a vote. Our bill directs the Federal Trade Commission to prohibit deceptive or misleading advertising related to the provision of abortion services. It also empowers the Commission to enforce these rules and collect penalties from organizations that violate the law. This is far from a radical proposal. For more than 100 years, the FTC has been authorized to prosecute entities that use deceptive practices. And let me be clear, any crisis pregnancy center that operates fairly, disseminates factual information, and is clear about what services it does and does not provide would be free to continue its work. This bill is not about preventing parents from receiving diapers or other supplies if they've chosen to continue a pregnancy. This is about organizations that deliberately deceive women and girls who are seeking help to terminate a pregnancy. And unfortunately, deception is at the heart of the typical CPC's business model. As the director of a CPC explained, the deception begins when women search for an abortion provider. The deception then continues once women walk through the doors of a crisis pregnancy center. I just want to tell you a bit about the experience of a young woman living in Massachusetts who visited a crisis pregnancy center earlier this year. Now, after finding the facility, which promised a, quote, free abortion consultation, this woman was asked to fill out forms to disclose personal information. She was repeatedly lied to about how far along she was in her pregnancy. She was told falsely that terminating her pregnancy would increase her risk of breast cancer and depression, and that an abortion could mean that she could never become pregnant in the future. And sadly, her experience is not unique. Here's the kicker. Women and girls visiting CPCs, like this young woman, often fill out forms and answer questionnaires requesting both personal identification and personal health information, which women provide because they believe they are in a medical facility that will protect their privacy. But because CPCs are not healthcare providers, these women have no legal protection, and these centers have no legal obligation to protect those data. These unlicensed facilities are not subject to federal privacy laws like the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, or HIPAA. This means that crisis pregnancy centers could pass along private information about who was seeking an abortion, where that person lives, and so on, information that in the wake of the Dobbs decision is particularly dangerous. The evidence of abuse is overwhelming. It is time to crack down on deceptive and misleading practices that many crisis pregnancy centers employ, because the last thing that a woman seeking reproductive care should have to worry about is whether she's being tricked, lied to, or deceived about the medical care that she seeks. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield.
Senator from New